Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. It is 1 o'clock here on the West Coast, and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Naj and Edgar, ACSA's Senior Director of Marketing and Communications. To my right, Edgar Zazueta, ACSA's Senior Director of Policy and Governmental Relations. Edgar, good to see you. I saw somebody bouncing around in the back there. We had a surprise guest.
Yeah, and we didn't run this by our executive producer, Michael Kelly, but this is where me being a dad, I think, is going to have to take precedence. So I did promise him. Your old friend wants to come say hi. Nico, you could come say hi. Nico.
Come on, Nico. Where are you? There he is.
You remember that guy, right?
Hey, buddy.
Yeah, when you put a bomb me. All right. Bye, everybody. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Am I on TV?
You're on TV again.
Yes, thanks, Nico. There you go.
Here's the reason I do not wear the AirPods anymore, my son Nico. So
hey, you know what? And there you go. I mean, Muhammad Warad, who's our loyal viewer over in Elk Grove Unified, is the best part of his week right there. So that's definitely a good thing. Folks, we welcome your questions and comments. You just saw Muhammad was able to toss in a comment there. We welcome them throughout the show. We've got a couple of guests that are coming on in a little bit. And we welcome your questions and comments with regard to that. Edgar and I were kind of going back and forth, and I'll just take you inside the show for just a moment. He and I, our executive producer, Michael Kelly, and Gianna Miller, who is a member of our communications team, she runs social media, always gather right after the show, the four of us, to kind of debrief and go over everything. And wouldn't you know, we left the show at 1:30 last week, and at 1:33, Sacramento County decides they're going to have all 13 of their districts go to distance learning. I had to go to the superintendent of schools and his team in Sacramento County, Dave Gordon, and tell him, look, none of this 1:33 breaking news anymore. It's got to be Wednesday at 12:58, because if there's news happening in education, it's happening right here. So Edgar, hopefully, he is going to live by that, and every other district administrator that is watching this show will also empower their comms teams to be doing that at 12:58 on a Wednesday.
We relayed that to Governor Newsom as well, to make sure if he's going to break any news, to do it in time for us to talk to our viewers.
Seriously, absolutely. So, folks, when we joined you last week at this very same time, Edgar, you and I talked about it was an incredibly busy, newsworthy first 2.5 days of the week. The second 2.5 days of the week certainly met that threshold that we had. Obviously, the governor coming out with his guidance as far as distance learning for those school districts in those counties that are on the monitoring list. We had CIF come out on Monday with their guidance for fall sports. And a story that made its way yesterday on EdSource, and it traveled to a number of places. You became quite a celebrity as the day went on, was about this waivers provision that a lot of people hadn't seen until the story came out. So can you go ahead and give a little bit of background on what that is and where it's coming from?
Sure. Yeah, this is getting a lot of attention as part of the governor's guidance, as you alluded to, which was kind of hidden in a footnote, frankly, that while, as you stated, counties that are on the state monitoring list, which I think we're up to 31 or 32, and we'll talk to our guest a little bit about this as well, there is a provision that for elementary schools specifically, that they can petition their county health officer if they're in consultation with their labor partners and their parents to open up elementary schools specifically in those counties. Rationale for elementary schools is that there may be unique childcare considerations there. Also that the data around younger children is better in terms of COVID infection. But it is raising a lot of questions in terms of how do I go about it? How do I know if I'm going to get approved? So it's an ongoing story there in terms of some communities that are looking for a pathway to seek in-person instruction.
Going around yesterday on social media after the EdSource article came out. And of course, John Fensterwald was with us last week. So this is certainly something that would have a major impact. I know from what I'm hearing, there are people that are trying to advocate the message to it. And I guess what would administrators need to really know about this type of provision that maybe they don't know at this moment?
Yeah. Our advice, and every community is going to be different, just like that's the theme right here throughout this whole COVID-19 pandemic, is that it's going to depend on the community. So the best advice we're giving them is work with your local county officials. That's your county superintendent. We're going to have 2 of them on our show today. Also, be in communication with your county health officer. And I think in most communities, there has been some dialogue that's been started on that front. And really think having them assess what's going to be our local process, what is this going to look like. I think even at the county level, they are still looking for some guidance from the state in terms of, is there going to be uniform criteria on how some of these decisions are going to be made? But I think the context is going to be local in this case.
Well, let's talk about that guidance, because there are a lot of questions right now about implementation of the guidance and where the support is going to be for districts, for administrators, whether it's in the district office or site administrators. And Antoine Miller, our one of our viewers who said hello from Kern County, I have a feeling that he may know who one of our guests is today. Joining us today, we've got 2 county superintendents. Mary Barlow is the Kern County Superintendent of Schools. Chris Hartley is the Humboldt County Superintendent of Schools, to talk a little bit about these issues. Mary Barlow, do you know Antoine Miller? Is he allowed? Is he allowed to be watching this show?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Perfect. You know what? We'll go ahead and start. Mary, I'll have you respond, and then Chris after that. Take us back to late afternoon on Friday, early evening on Friday, after you've had a few hours to digest this guidance that's come from the governor. What were your considerations at that moment where you had that opportunity to just kind of reflect on it? And what were some of the roadblocks that you see in front of you right now?
So first of all, thank you for inviting me to be on the show. I really feel that we were in a good position. It was signaled early that there might be something that would be issued on a statewide basis. It was another pivot point for us, as this past 5 months have been. But what we've been really fortunate to have here in Kern County is something called the Kern Education Pledge. And we've been working together for months, years before this. And that trust was what we built right away upon to then launch task force and dig deep into what school would look like post COVID. And that research is what we used to make that pivot. So we knew, and taking a look at 47 different school districts, some as small as 8 students, some as large as 40,000 students, some are rural, some are urban, some are suburban, that we were going to have a very different set of requirements for that each and every district would want to pursue in terms of delivering educational services. And so whereas pre-Friday afternoon, we had a variety of plans that included a hybrid for some districts, choice of hybrid and distance learning, or even some districts doing full 5 days of instruction. All districts had planned for a distance learning option, knowing we needed to be ready for that. So we were thankful that we had been working together in that area.
Craig, your response?
Oh yeah, absolutely. First of all, hey, thanks a lot to ACSA for all your support, and you guys are becoming quite celebrities throughout the state. We're seeing you on. We were talking before the show. You're on this thing all the time now, so we appreciate your advocacy at ACSA. We really appreciate your communication, and your service standard for the membership is something I value a great deal as an ACSA member and a county superintendent. So thank you all very much. Mary is right. Having the scenario planning has been really critical to being able to pivot. And I don't think it's any surprise that we know this can go in any direction, because that's what it's been doing since the course back in beginning in March. So I'll talk more like along the feeling nature of seeing the governor's direction come out. And I think we were, happy to start to see some direction and moving away from recommendations and guidance to some decision making. We might not always agree with decisions that are being made, but it's kind of nice to start to have a place that you can stand firmly on and start to move forward with. So I appreciate that. But it doesn't make the decisions to open school, to on-site instruction, or distance learning, or a blend any easier. And so Humboldt County is not on the watch list. And so we have the option of doing all of those different scenarios. And our districts are working really hard to pull that together, and our partnership with public health. But I guess my first reaction was, hey, great, it's nice to see we got some set standards that we can follow. But at the same time, these decisions aren't getting any easier for our school districts and for our parents and certainly our community.
Dr. Barlow, Dr. Hartley, thank you just for your service and for joining us today. I know that if there's ever a time where our folks are relying on the county superintendents, it's right now. So just thank you for everything you're doing in your respective communities. I'll start with Mary, and I think Chris just talked about this, that you are in 2 different counties, 2 different situations in terms of one being on the monitoring list and one not. And so this issue that we talked about earlier, the waiver, Mary, I know that in your county, given how big it is, given that there's different circumstances in terms of the health situation, has this been a question you've already been getting about how to go through the waiver? And do you have any sense of how that's going to play out in your community and you working with their county health officer?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been very fortunate that our county health officer has been on the line with our superintendents, and immediately we knew that there are some districts that are interested, and their board members are interested in pursuing a waiver. Some of the districts are in outlying areas, very remote areas where there are no cases or very few cases. And where that is the situation, and where they have sufficient facilities and agreement from their collective bargaining units and their parents to deliver in-class instruction or hybrid instruction, to the extent that they can, they will be filing waivers. I've also received calls from private schools as well as some charter schools who are very interested in looking what that waiver process will be. We've heard it might be as early as Friday that we'll get some direction from the California Department of Public Health on what that process would look like. And we've also heard that we can expect that it will be a fairly quick turnaround. And that's important because, you have to be off of the list for 14 days. And in this changing situation, we're going to have to pivot on a dime and open up those classrooms and be ready to do so, because that window might close again. We just don't know how long we'll be able to sustain off of, being off of that list. So that's my comment there.
Thanks, Mary. And we want to remind all of our viewers, your questions, your comments, please go ahead and submit those, because we are taking those live and we'll be able to address some of your questions as we move through the show. Chris, give me a lay of the land right now on what is going on in Humboldt County, because you have a very unique part of the state. What do the reopening plans look like in your county?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Naj. Hey, Edgar, can you bring Nico back for this one? We might need some backup support.
He heard you. Look at that.
Well, if you've ever traveled to Humboldt County, you realize it's just absolutely beautiful up here, and we're in a very rural part of the northern piece of the state on the coast. And due to the rural nature, we have, like Mary said, in Kern County, we have districts as small as 8 students, and our largest is up, over a couple thousand students, and everything in between. And Humboldt County folks really appreciate the opportunity to make decisions for themselves, decisions that are best for their particular school community. And our school boards take their responsibility in making those decisions very highly as well. And so one of the things that is the lay of the land is that folks want to be able to weigh in on what's best for their particular school district. And each district is based upon the needs of their community. And a lot of times our districts are truly the hub of some of those small towns in Humboldt County. And so it's a very personal, it's a very emotional decision that people take very seriously here in the county. And so not being on the watch list gives us the option to have the different models. And listen, nothing's unusual. It's what you're hearing throughout the rest of the state. Some districts are looking at distance only. Some are looking at a potential blend. And some districts are looking at on-site delivery. The challenge we all have is we know that it'd be great if we could have more consistency, in any of our counties among our districts. But that's challenging to move a group of districts in that direction. If that's not what is best for their particular group or their particular town or what their school board feels. And so I think what we've built, though, is up through this process is we've really harnessed the power of the relationships that exist here in our county and the networking that we have. And something that's really grown is our partnership with public health to be able to provide guidance, to schools who are now utilizing a template to design and create their plans for each school site based on their needs.
Mary, we had a couple questions actually, and throw one at you that I know you touched on. I think Deborah asking about the timing of the information. I think you cited that the state had told you that there may be some more information at the end of the week. So I'll let you touch on that again. And then there's also a question in terms of childcare, I believe, child development and preschool, and your understanding on how all this guidance will impact people's ability to provide those programs.
Yeah. I appreciate that question. First of all, just to go back on the timing, absolutely. Our understanding is toward the end of the week, we would get more clarity from the California Department of Public Health as well as CDE related to what that waiver might look like. I know a lot of attorneys are weighing in and talking about this in terms of what does consult look like. And so there's a lot of ideas about what that should look like. And as we get more clarity, of course, ACSA is a tremendous help in getting the word out and getting us all unified in pursuing the best course of action for each individual district. Going back to childcare, that is one of the biggest hurdles with moving into an all distance learning environment. When we look at Kern County, 73% of our students are eligible for free and reduced lunch, 30% live in poverty. It's just, there's tremendous equity issues that we need to address. We'll get into that later, I know, related to connectivity and devices and that sort of thing. We've tried to bridge that gap, and we've been working on that at a fast and furious pace. But what I'm particularly concerned about and what keeps me up at night are those families who both parents work, or single working mom or father, and not able to have access to resources, childcare resources for either school-age children or the very young. And it is tremendously impactful to their ability to continue to be employed and to deliver the support that they need for their children. And then if you think about it, that's why we focused on really TK through third grade and bringing that group back first in terms of instruction as well as special ed students. It's because we know that the students 10 years of age and lower, according to research, are less likely to contract COVID-19 and be able to shed the virus to others. However, they are also less likely to be able to fully utilize and get all the benefits from an online instruction environment. It doesn't matter whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. It doesn't matter if you have the individual opportunity to do a chat like we are right now. It's just not the same thing as being in a classroom with your teacher and your peers over the period of time to develop those relationships, and for us to check in with one another on how students are doing in terms of their social and emotional well-being. I'm very concerned about that, and I'm very concerned about the fact that we need to provide some type of connection to childcare for school-age children as well as younger children. Now, we are operating at this time. We opened on Monday our own early childhood education programs that are full day and some of the half day across the county. And we are following the guidelines as provided by the state and our local public health officials. And we'll just take it one day at a time.
Mary, we've got a question that's coming from Elissa Beckham regarding distance learning. And Chris, I think this is probably something you can address too, but Mary, we'll start with you because she's from Kern County. She says Kern High School District is able to offer distance learning. Will that affect the court and community school within alternative education? I guess there's everybody's looking for more clarity with the various issues. So Mary, if you want to hit on Elissa's question, and then Chris after that.
Sure. So we operate in Kern County a large court and community school program, and we have combined along with our 28 of our local school districts, including Kern High, to all use the Canvas platform. We started studying that back in March, and we've worked with our educators across Kern County to create a common curriculum that covers English language arts, English language development, mathematics, social emotional learning. It provides translation. It provides assistance to students who have any type of disability. It's both synchronous and asynchronous, and it allows each teacher to adapt to the needs of their particular classroom. And we feel like this is the most robust and well-established learning platform in the nation. Did a lot of research on it. It's also the platform that is being used by our community colleges. And so by so many of our districts joining in, including our own alternative education program, the teachers are going to have the advantage of having these ready, developed 9 weeks worth of instruction that's ready to go right now, so that they're not recreating the wheel. They're customizing it for the students that they serve, and putting their own videos up, and communicating on a regular basis with their students. And so we feel like it's just a great opportunity to share resources and learn together. And right now, as I said, almost 30 districts. We had a couple more that decided they wanted to do it yesterday out of 47, and it represents more than 2/3 of the students of Kern County.
Is Chris's mic, Chris, is your mic up? There we go.
There we go. So yeah, I was just stating supporting the adopted curriculum and having the platforms and the infrastructure in place so that we can move forward. But one of the key things I think when we're looking particularly, here at Humboldt County in our Carton Community Program and alternative ed, and really access to distance learning in rural communities like Humboldt County, is an equity issue around technology access. So one of the things on the curriculum side, we've got a lot of robust programs available there, but we really have to look at our student needs as far as accessibility. Do they have the equipment that they need? Do they have internet access? We have a district here that's still 2/3 of their population in the most rural part of our county doesn't have the internet access that they need to do it, really rigorous distance learning programs. And so we're working really hard on that front. But also with regards to that is access to counseling and mental health services. So our community has faced a lot of trauma, and we had trauma in our community for our students before this pandemic. And it hasn't gone away just because we're not seeing the students on a daily basis. And that concerns me a tremendous amount for all the students in the county and throughout the state, but particularly our at-risk program kids. And so we know we'll be doing some level of blended work with our students from our alternative ed and Carton community, because we got to find ways to touch base, connect them to the services that they need. Our counseling services and our interagency partnerships are really strong. And those folks are wondering, hey, how do we access our foster youth right now? CWS asks, how can we still get connected to those relationships that we built before all of this? And that's really front of mind for all of us, no matter what model we move forward with. Obviously, we're in this for the long haul, and we've got to get back on pace with how do we serve our students' social and emotional needs.
And Mary and Chris, you could both touch on the next question. Given the news last week and given the direction we were moving, and the percentages, I think over 80% now of our state is at least going to start in distance learning. So while this was a reality for everybody, for our educators, for parents in the spring, I think all of us are now taking a deep breath. Okay, we're going to do this again, right? And so getting the questions, now folks are asking the questions that were already out there a few weeks ago, but what's going to be different? How is this going to look different? So from working with your respective districts and superintendents, what would you say are the major differences in terms of what we learned in the spring and what distance learning will look like now as we enter the fall?
Thank you. I think that's absolutely first and foremost on all of our minds. And I know that the teachers, the administrators, parents, and students have been thinking about what worked and what didn't work. And so in that post debriefing, what we've all decided we need is a set of roles and responsibilities, really a set of expectations. And I know that it was set forth in SB 98 in terms of what quality distance learning will look like. And all of us have been so busy coming together and reimagining education and what it should look like, and doing our research internationally on what the best practices look like. And so you will see that districts will be providing very clear sets of expectations and norms for what teachers will be doing and what paraprofessionals will be doing to support teachers in the classroom, what the rigorous daily contact looks like, what content looks like, that it is standards aligned, that there are opportunities for peers to meet peer-to-peer, and that there continues to be an expectation of how parents assist their children with interacting in this new environment and completing work. We're going to have student choice. And so in these cases where students have a responsibility, they're going to choose how they're going to demonstrate proficiency or mastery in certain areas. And so the quality of the materials, the content is going to be much higher. We've had time to think, we've had time to research, and we've had time to plan. So we're coming together and putting forward our best foot. Now, I'm never going to pretend that it's the same thing as the magic that happens between peers and children in the classroom. It's just not. It's just not the same environment. But I think that it will, many people will find that it is very rich and that they will see some continued, they will see growth.
Chris, we talk about equity so much here at ACSA. You've been a very involved member. And so I want to address an equity question that's coming from Angela Shull. And then Mary, if you want to address this as well. The question is, what are other districts' plans for distance learning for SPED, special education, particularly with providing services and testing? Chris, we've talked about loss of learning. Every district is talking about loss of learning. When we talk about equity, when we talk about special education, we have to kind of connect those dots. How can you respond to that?
Yeah, that's an amazing challenge for everybody throughout the state with regards to our special ed population and all students that are at risk and have high needs or need an custom plan. And this has been ongoing since this all happened in March. And I think that was some of our earliest concerns is what type of loss of learning might there be? How do we stay on top of that? And then how to reassess when we start reconnecting on a more frequent basis. And so our teams at the county have been, we serve the most severe needs of special ed students in the county. And we're actually piloting an on-site in-person program right now over the summer that's going really well. And so we really want to reconnect with our student population there. And it goes back into three major factors, right? So it goes into how are the health and safety standards that we can provide to have more on-site and daily instruction and connection with these students who need that service the greatest. How can we ensure that teaching and learning continues to happen in a meaningful and relevant way and enhanced, knowing that there's been a bit of a gap over the last few months, and how do we do that with the resources that are available? And so you can't do any of this work without looking at all three of those areas, and special ed is one of those most critical. I'm super proud of the SELPAs throughout the state of California and the advocacy that they've done. When you look at the resources and allocation piece, seeing that special ed funding come through, hey, listen, folks, that's a big deal. That was a really big deal. So kudos to ACSA and everybody who worked hard for that. For Humboldt County, that is a boon for us. That is a big game changer for our special ed allocations. And those resources are critical in order for us to do anything. And so you kind of look at it from all those perspectives. And now we have the added perspective of the political arena. And so we're balancing that in conjunction with the teaching and learning, health and safety, and the finances and resources. Knowing that we've got to get our special ed population back into the classroom as frequent as possible. And I've been super proud of the educators here in Humboldt County for their creativity and their willingness to try things like the pilot program that we have going right now.
I think we have time for one more question, and this is to both of you, and we'll start with Chris. Both of you had tough jobs in ordinary times. Obviously, this COVID crisis has made everybody's job difficult, and have to imagine it's presenting challenges for you folks. So maybe you could just touch on that and kind of leave us on a positive note with all of the challenges ahead. Some promise for the field and for our parents and for everybody that just trying to start the new year. The new year always comes with so much optimism, and we still have to try to get that back, even with everything that we're facing. So we'll start with Chris.
Yeah, thanks. We could take 30 minutes on this, but I will be quick. We have those moments, we all do, right? Where you go home and you're like, what in the heck have I gotten myself into? But in a short amount of time, I am absolutely thrilled to be in this position and to work with such an amazing staff here at the county, but really our district folks, our teachers, our educators, our administrators, our leaders, our school board members. I am just so proud to be a part of this time period. This is historic. And we're in this historic moment, and we know heroic actions come out of these type of situations, and I'm seeing it on a daily basis, and I'm just super blessed to be in this position. You know, we've had to get used to ambiguity on a greater scale. We've had to make sure we're communicating as frequently and to not have any assumptions. If I've had one thing I'd like to improve is to stop assuming I'm communicating enough, because you're not. You can never communicate enough. And really to leverage those relationships that we've built before this and that are just continuing to grow and network is really bringing us through some challenging times. And then one of those is our partnership with agencies like public health. We've got to continue to grow that. It's blossoming here, and it's taken a lot of work though. And it's taken a lot of mindful intent to do good work together and to always keep your eye on the prize, and that is the best interest of our students.
Beautifully stated. I could say ditto. Let me just add, I am equally proud. I've said this to our educational leaders and all of our educators here in Kern County for their commitment to really reinventing education. And I think that we'll come out of this stronger and more resilient and responsive to the real changing world that we're in. It's causing us to become much more proficient on a very fast pace, at a very fast pace in the use of technology and trying to bridge that digital divide and focusing on equity issues. It's just shone a light on those issues that really need to be addressed in a systemic way. And so I'm just really proud and honored to be a part of the efforts across Kern County with these incredible leaders and across the state with my colleagues, Chris and ACSA colleagues, to really advocate on behalf of education. If people didn't understand how important education is and teachers in the classroom and the normalcy and all of the other additional supports and services that are provided within that school setting, that community school setting before this, they certainly do now. And I think that more than ever, it's going to be a question of how are we going to invest enough to make sure that all students, regardless of the zip code in which they reside, get the supports and the services that they need to be successful and to live out their dreams. And for all of us working together, sharing our ideas, many hands make light work. And I believe that's what's pulled us through, and that will be what will continue to make us strong as we move forward through this COVID pandemic.
Mary Barlow is the Kern County Superintendent of Schools. Chris Hartley is the Humboldt County Superintendent of Schools. Chris and Mary, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been an honor to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And folks, we want to encourage you to share this video of the show because we had some very powerful content there, Edgar, and I want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to see this. And in the midst of one of those questions, the lights in my studio decided to go out. So I think next week, Nico is going to have to come over here and start running laps in my studio to make sure that we get it going. Edgar, final thoughts from you as we head into the second half of the week.
I just love how our superintendents left us on that positive note. And as a parent, just really starting the year that, like they stated, there's some challenges. But I think if we're in this together and everybody doing their part, it leaves me with a lot of optimism about where we're headed.
I would agree. And we want to thank all of you for joining us, especially for our first-time viewers today. We saw a lot of new names come up on the chat. We are back on the air next Wednesday. More news and information. Another important topic we'll cover next week. Thank you so much for being with us today. Edgar, good to see you, again. And folks, thank you. We'll see you next Wednesday here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break.